The way we consume and share news today, it is largely rooted in social media outlets, a reason why it's crucial to look at what's being discussed online. From the hottest issues to trends for our daily social media minute, we're joined by Yerika. Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be back.
So I'm assuming you did not have time over the weekend to get all caught up with the second part of The Glory.
Actually, I've seen snippets of it on YouTube.
You know, I normally do not rush to watch anything because it'll always be there. But because I knew it'd be written with spoilers online, I did watch it.
The incredible thing is we're living in a day and age where an entire series is a new season of a popular series is released on Netflix, and some diehard fans, like 5 hours later, the entire summary of season 2 was already up on YouTube.
It's like a different level of commitment and fandom, perhaps. And there's clearly a lot of buzz with that release of second part of The Glory. Now, it's most unfortunate because the major theme of the TV series is about school bullying and what it does to the victims, not just over the first few years.
It's a lifelong trauma.
A lifelong trauma, you're right. So it is most unfortunate that the director of this series, who helmed the creation of this project that got the conversation reignited, has been accused of school bullying.
Yeah. This is like the worst narrative.
I think so too.
Right.
And I think initially that's why the director denied that this ever happened.
Yes, because, anyways, let's talk about the story.
Okay.
The producer of this super popular show, Ahn Gil Ho, has admitted to physically assaulting students at a neighboring middle school as a high school student. This was in the Philippines.
Okay.
And he's also apologized to the victims in a statement through his attorney yesterday. Now, according to the statement released by his law firm, Ahn physically assaulted middle schoolers when he was 17 years old while studying abroad in the Philippines. This was back in 1996.
Not to condone his behavior, but he tried to explain what had happened. But his admission is also 180 turnaround from his previous statement on Saturday, just a day before. Let's hear his side of the story too, though.
Yes. So according to the statement, what happened was all those years ago, he heard that his girlfriend, who was a few years younger than he was teased by a group of her own friends, actually, at her school. And he got upset. He went to that school. They went to different schools, and he physically assaulted the kids who was responsible for the teasing.
Okay, depending on how you spin that story, you can have an entirely different perspective. Emotions got the better of him. He was also young, but we can't just pass on physical violence as youthful indiscretion.
That's right. Now, even his ex-girlfriend has spoken up about what happened. She even said that the teasing was more playful than hurtful.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, Ahn said he wants to sincerely apologize from the bottom of his heart and that he would like to meet with the victim in person or even communicate through, a phone call to convey his deepest apologies.
Okay, but how this story surfaced is also most unfortunate. On Saturday, Ahn had initially denied all accusations of being a school violence perpetrator when news reports came out on Friday following an anonymous post online. This is how these stories break these days.
Exactly. After local news outlets reported the story, people on social media commented, "Oh, how ironic to see a school violence perpetrator make a series on school bullying and for that show to become immensely successful," right?
It has completely reignited, I think, a conversation of school bullying and how to root it out. And like you said, what kind of life trauma it causes for the victims, and how if the perpetrators are just out in the open and becoming public figures, it becomes even more damaging for the victims.
Again, I do not condone any sort of physical violence, no matter what happened. And I'm just curious about what people, the general public, think about this. And I've been reading a lot of threads on social media, and many people say, well, the victim was a perpetrator too in the first place if they teased Ahn's ex-girlfriend. But, based on what Ahn's girlfriend said, the teasing wasn't that serious. So Yeah.
It's tough, right?
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't help that it's more than a decade ago. And again, we're not trying to condone, I think, the physical violence aspect of it, but trying to better understand what happened years ago.
Right.
I'm also really careful about just canceling things altogether.
Correct.
We do kind of tend to garner support to cancel things. However, let's hear it out. And I'm hoping that apology is, as promised, extended.
And very sincere too.
That's the least he can do at this point. The second part of the glory, it's a lot to take into.
Yeah.
Just,
I noticed.
Just to put it out there, guys.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to our second buzzword of the day. 200 dogs rescued from slaughter, apparently in a win-win program with farm owners. I mean, initially they had difficulty trying to maybe find a proper home, proper owners.
That's right. So there was a dog farm in Asan in Chungcheong-namdo province, which is around 100 kilometers from Seoul. This is the site of where 200 dogs were living in extreme squalor. Really bad conditions,
Dire
actually.
conditions doesn't even cut it. I mean, they're so crowded in these cages, and it's cold in the winter, it's hot in the summer. It's not very hygienic either.
It's completely unhygienic. And the dog farm has become the 18th such facility to be closed down by an international animal advocacy group that basically campaigns to end the dog meat trade in several countries in Asia, including South Korea, India, China, and Vietnam.
Okay.
Now, the large-scale rescue operation in Asan was joined by staff members from the United States, UK, India, Mexico, and Costa Rica. And in the past few months, these activists had conducted health checkups, vaccinations on these dogs, basically preparing them to fly them to North America in search of their forever family.
I actually know someone who adopted one of these puppies.
Really?
And it's quite a story, and it's a strenuous process. I mean, it's not easy. It's very costly. So it's not really, it takes time to unfortunately find 200 dogs, another forever home, as you've said. I do wonder, what kind of dogs are they? And of course, you're talking about someone's livelihood too, right?
That's right.
Always comes into question.
Always. Now, most of these dogs are Tosa dogs.
Okay.
They're one of the most commonly traded breeds in the dog meat market because apparently they go very, very quickly in size. Now, many would also imagine, like you said, that shutting down a dog farm, it would involve conflicts with farm owners, because that's their livelihood. But that was not the case for the Models for Change program launched by this organization, HSI, back in 2015.
Okay, so something that this animal advocacy group is doing is a little bit different.
That's
and if it's working, maybe there's a page we can learn from.
Yeah, so they've created this model, right? What they do is they sign individual contracts with farm owners, and the NGO offers financial support in return for closing down these facilities and giving up the dogs for adoption. And this helps the proprietors transition to a new profession unrelated to animals, such as farming, like cabbage farming.
So this is much more realistic, right? Instead of just saying this is wrong and taking away their business idea and just saying this is not right. And even if they agree, what will they do next?
Exactly. So through this program, the NGO has sent abroad 2,700 dogs, helped almost 20 farmers transition to a new career. And the farmers have been actually very sort of cooperative throughout this entire process. And, this one farmer, the owner of this farm said he will now farm cabbage for the rest of his life, and he was quite happy actually, and he's happy for the dogs as well.
Okay, yeah. So for us to just put all of these dog farmers in one big monolithic group and say they're all cruel would be misguided, right?
Yes.
You just need to figure out then how do they get to the next step of their lives, I suppose.
Right, exactly. So instead of saying you shut down all your business operations, they're trying to slowly phase out the meat trade, dog meat trade in Korea in a more sustainable way.
I think so too. As for the journeys these dogs go on, it is intense.
Yeah.
And during the height of the pandemic, it was rather difficult to just send dogs like they were doing previously before the pandemic. But things are apparently operating at pre-pandemic levels and everything is on course. cabbage farming sounds great. Can you imagine how much cabbage we eat with kimchi love?
That's right.
All right, on to our final story of the day. Hanbok parade held in Sao Paulo, really?
Yeah.
To celebrate approximately 60 years of Korean immigration to the country.
That's right. So a large-scale Hanbok parade was held on Paulista Boulevard, which is like smack in the center of the city, Sao Paulo, Brazil's largest city. The Korean Culture Center in Sao Paulo and the Brazilian Culture and Arts Association said that they had planned and hosted this event to commemorate the 60th anniversary of Korean immigration to Brazil. We're streaming an image right now. Oh!
Yes,
locals and Koreans wearing very colorful hanbok. So eye-catching, our own traditional costume.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And against the concrete jungle,
Right.
it kind of stands out. How do they have access to, I mean, come on, those are like wedding ceremony
All different
hanboks,
kinds of or styles
the
of hanbok.
gatekeepers. You get the whole works. It's a lot of people too.
Yeah, I know. So the organizers selected 103 volunteers out of hundreds of Koreans and Brazilians who applied in advance. As you can see, and like you said, participants wore hanbok in various styles, and they walked around for about an hour on this 2-kilometer stretch, boulevard.
These events would be incomplete without the fan dance.
Yeah, and look at all the bystanders and admirers taking photos. They're looking at this group of fan dancers wearing pink. Yeah.
You said 103 volunteers were chosen. That's a really specific number.
That's right. So the number 103 represents the number of Korean immigrants, the first to arrive in Santos, Brazil, back in 1963 aboard the Dutch ship Chicharenka.
So that's what the 103 stands for. I mean, it was not just traditional dances. Apparently, there are a host of other performances.
Of course, there has to be K-pop. Fan dance performances and other bunch of cultural events are being held in Brazil to mark the 60th anniversary. And these cultural events will continue until the end of next year.
I'm a little desensitized because we're seeing more and more of these events that respect Korean culture, but I've got to say, this is in the middle of Brazil. That should blow our mind continuously.
Yeah, Sao Paulo has a large Asian population, by the way, especially the Chinese population.
They do,
yeah,
but respecting Korean culture, maybe it's just as important, don't you think? Anyway, Erica, welcome back and thank you for today's update.
See you tomorrow.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.